Sergeant O'Brien, I understand you're the acting first sergeant of your company.
Yes, sir, that's right.
How many of your men do you think would volunteer to go up and be in one of those foxholes when the bomb went off?
Oh, I'd volunteer, I guess, for about a half a dozen.
At least half a dozen?
Yes, sir.
You know, that's quite a loud noise that bomb makes when it goes off. Do you think it would do you any harm?
No, I don't think the noise would, sir, no.
How about radiation? Do you think there's much danger from radiation?
Well, radiation is the least of the worries that the men are thinking about.
I think most people thought that radiation was the greatest danger, didn't they? Where did they learn different?
We were, prior to our instructions here. We received a very thorough briefing before we even came in this close to contact with it.
You feel that those instructions have given you confidence in your ability
to
protect yourself?
Yes, sir.
How about the exercise you're going through up there? Is that something you think the men will go through with all right?
Yes, sir. I think they'll do very well, and they're mentally ready for it. They're eager and ready to go.
Good. Well, we're glad to have you here.
Within 30 seconds will come the thunderous roar of the explosion 7 miles away. The typical mushroom-shaped cloud boils upward. Only 10% of all injuries from high atomic airbursts are from X and gamma rays. Reports indicate that these are the greatest concern of the average citizen and soldier. This test, in which combat troops are participating, is designed to dispel much of the fear and uncertainty surrounding atomic radiation and the effects of these rays. Casualties from an atomic explosion are estimated to be in the following proportions. From blast and missile, 60%. From flash burns and heat, 30%. And from radiation, 10%. Post-blast interviews are conducted.
Sergeant Gutierrez, you've seen a lot of action. Tell us just exactly how this thing looked to you. Think it's much of a weapon?
I think it is, sir.
Tell us about it. How did it look?
Well, from my point of view, I think it's a terrific weapon, and I'd hate to be under it.
Would you like to be any closer to it than you were?
If I did, sir, I think I'd dig the hole a little deeper.
Can you tell us whether you think that the orientation you had for this weapon prepared you for what you saw out here?
Yes, sir, it did.
How about the fear that you felt? Did they prepare you against that?
Yes, sir, they did. They told us enough so that, well, our fear was cut down so much more than it was before the orientation that we hardly had any fear at all.
Would you have confidence that you'd be able to go right in there now and carry out your tactical mission a few minutes after the blast?
Yes.
How close do you think, now that you've seen it, you'd be willing to be?
Well, sir, I'll tell you that after I see them positions up there.
Well, you know you dug some foxholes about a few miles away, and you're going to see just what things look like in there.
Yes.
What are you going to do after you look at your positions?
Well, if we look at positions, we'll pick up our weapons and we'll move in toward ground zero. See what the area looks like in there and toward...
Did you feel now, after it's all over, that you've had a big letdown, that there's any disappointment in this weapon?
No, sir, there's no disappointment.
No disappointment.
It's certainly a powerful weapon. I can't understand how anything so beautiful can be so destructive.
Radiological safety teams sent out to measure residual radiation report that the forward area is safe to enter. As their part of the tactical exercise, the BCT entrucks to move up to its previously prepared position. Here, the men detruck and move forward to examine their foxholes and weapons. Soon each man will see for himself what his chances for survival would have been had he been in his foxhole at the time of the blast. In recovering their weapons from the foxholes, the men find little damage done to either the weapon or the dug-in position. Information from the radiological instruments indicate that a negligible amount of radiation exists at this position, approximately 2 miles from ground zero. Film badges are removed from weapons and will be turned over to technical personnel for processing. The BCT receives a briefing in which the condition of equipment and emplacements is discussed. Preliminary observations indicate that a man in a foxhole caught this close to an atomic explosion would be reasonably safe. The commanding officer of the battalion combat team gives the signal for the advance toward the BCT objective, an area approximately 1/2 mile from ground zero. In a formation of 15 columns abreast, the team moves across the desert, which only a short time before was subjected to the atomic blast. In theory, they are launching an attack against a foe which has been stunned by an atomic weapon used in close tactical support of ground troops. The radiological safety teams, with their detection instruments, have moved out ahead of the troops. The evaluators who follow shortly after will examine field fortifications and equipment for evidence of blast and heat damage as a basis for reports to be rendered by the effects evaluation group. Here, an ordnance evaluator finds a carbine-mounted snooper scope only slightly damaged, damage which can be repaired in the field. In some cases, the paint on tanks, recoilless rifles, howitzers, and other metal equipment was seared and scorched by the intense heat on the side nearest the bomb. Portions of a test bridge were damaged. Some weapons are blown over. Rubber parts and sections of tires are found to have melted. Telephone equipment sustained the blast and heat without serious damage. The evaluators and observers examine field fortifications and find them intact even at positions closest to ground zero, though heat has scorched wooden supports. Sheep below ground level in zigzag trenches show no visible sign of blast or heat effects. However, those in pens on the ground surface sustained wool burns. Blood samples are taken. A .30 caliber machine gun is checked for radiation. Other standard Army field equipment and vehicles show considerable damage from heat and blast. The battalion combat team continues its march toward positions closer to ground zero. As they enter the blast area within an hour after the detonation, they realize the danger of radiation sickness from an air burst is slight. A zone pole several hundred yards from ground zero is inspected by a radiological safety man. Only slight evidence of radioactivity is found. The combat team proceeds with its tactical mission, continuing the simulated attack by passing through a portion of the bombed area. In these closer positions, the men inspect the sheep and the zigzag trenches. At one of the test positions, the men are briefed concerning damage to the various test positions which they have just seen. Later, the effects and evaluation group will prepare detailed reports on the results of the test for distribution to persons concerned with the tactical use and development of atomic weapons. Before entrucking for camp, BCT participants in the test are inspected with radiological detection instruments for evidence of radiation. A thorough head-to-foot examination will reveal any accumulation of radioactive material. Vigorous sweeping with a broom removes contaminated dust and dirt from shoes and clothing. Initial reactions are, it is possible to utilize an atomic weapon in close support of ground troops in those cases where the conditions surrounding its use are carefully considered and where participating troops are fully indoctrinated in the capabilities and effects of an atomic weapon.
All right, General, go ahead. This test, I think, went very well. I was quite interested in how the troops reacted. I didn't find any soldier there who was afraid. They were all, the ones who hadn't seen a bomb before, were a little apprehensive, but there was no sigh of relief when the thing went off, and no great exuberance which comes from falling being scared. In other words, as far as the soldier reaction to the thing, I would say they took it in their stride as American soldiers take all things of danger or things that they have been told about and oriented on. The troops moved out just as soon as the safety officers pronounced it safe and went out in good formation. Last I saw of them, they were pretty well up toward ground zero. Well, the reaction of the troops in the trenches, they did exactly what they were told to do. They showed good discipline, which was good sense in this case. Any man stuck his head up, there was trouble in store for him.
And they seemed to take all the discipline very well.
They did indeed.
And how did they move out when the order was given to move out into
moved out very promptly in good formation.
And they maintained tight formation. And you think that this training that they have received, that you have received the training that these men got there, will that be beneficial in any other time it may come across atomic attacks?
Yes, it'll be beneficial to them and also to their buddies when they go back to units, so they can tell them about this thing.
We would need trained soldiers. Now that atomic weapons are definitely here, we certainly need the trained soldiers to know what to do and to pass the word on not only to the people in the armed forces but to the civilians as well.
That is correct, and we need the soldier to understand this weapon so we can use it intelligently.